Good afternoon, my name is Ivan Arenas. I'm the Associate Director for Community Partnerships at the Institute for Research on Race and Public Policy. And on behalf of our director, Amanda Lewis, who's unfortunately not feeling well today, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the third Policy 101 workshop of the year, which is a collaboration with the Institute for Policy and Civic Engagement and the Institute of Government and Public Affairs. The goal of these Policy 101 workshops is to increase the impact of the important research that UIC scholars are producing. In putting these workshops together, we are thinking of policy not just as the work we do to shape the way legislators are creating laws, but also the way in which we, as researchers, engage with various publics outside of the university to map out the changing landscape of social issues and public discourse, and also in our work directly with community members and activists to put knowledge to use to address the shared challenges that we face. The workshops are intended to be substantive conversations about different aspects that connect our research to communities and to public debates, but also practical, developing our skills in these areas. The first workshop focused on what it means to conduct engaged research with the community as full collaborators. The second workshop focused on how to write op-eds. If any of you missed those, we are taping these workshops and making them available online. So please do look for our website for this and encourage colleagues who may be interested and couldn't be here today to look there as well. Before turning it over to Joe Hoereth, Director of the Institute for Policy and Civic Engagement, who's going to introduce the panel and moderate, I would like to tell you about two other upcoming IRRPP events real quickly. The first, on February 8th, is our spring inter-college lunchtime lecture featuring 3 scholars IRRPP has funded who are going to be talking about their work on health and disability. And on February 23rd, we have an event in our Embodied Inequality series where Professor Dana Matthew from the University of Colorado will speak about her new book titled Just Medicine, A Cure for Racial Inequality in American Healthcare. More information about these is on our website. So thanks for being here today, and thank you to our partners IPSI and IGPA, and to the staff of both of those and IRRPP for all the work they do to put this together. Joe, with you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, everyone, for coming out today. We appreciate it. This panel will begin with a presentation. We'll have Q&A along the way, and then we'll close out afterward with Q&A at the end and discussion. But along the way, we want this to be as conversational as possible. We'll pause at a couple of points and invite people to raise questions that they may have about, especially about something that you just heard in the presentation. So as Yvonne said, I'm Joe Hoereth. I'm Director of the Institute for Policy and Civic Engagement. I'd like to thank IRRPP and IGPA, acronyms that Yvonne has already explained, but they're also on screen, in partnering with us on this particular workshop, which I know as in my role, it's something dealing with new media and social media are something that I struggle with. I admit that. And so was excited at the opportunity to be a part of this panel where I knew I was going to definitely learn something, but also wrestle with some of the real challenges that we here at the university deal with as we tread into this space and try to do our work in this context of this new media. So this panel will address strategies for researchers to utilize various platforms to get your stories out through new media. We use the term new media very intentionally to describe a wide range of social and web-based media content sources through which much of the public is getting its information nowadays. And the goal of the reason why we're using that term is because we know that, particularly for this audience, for academics, traditional social media may not be exactly what you're comfortable using or may not be sort of perfectly appropriate for how you want to get your work out there. In our conversations, sources and platforms that go beyond Facebook and Twitter, things like academia and ResearchGate, for example. And while we know that social media is powerful and its platforms are primarily what makes up this new media space, we know recent history, right? We know both its power, if you think Arab Spring, its power to sort of be a key part of a social movement and galvanize people and share information, but we're also seeing its limitations and really even worse, some of its dangers and potential drawbacks, I think really, from what we saw in the recent election, being used as a vehicle for spreading misinformation or identifying voices that maybe some folks wanted to suppress in some way, shape, or form, some way, shape, or other. And so, you know, we're also talking today within the context of recent history where faculty like Stephen Salatia's job offer from U of I, we're all familiar with that story, being rescinded after he tweeted about the Israel-Gaza conflict, which resulted in a lawsuit, but still not his job offer. And so we're living in a time where social media can really blur those lines between our professional and personal identities, make it difficult to cut through, not just for what we share our identities, make it challenging for that, but as consumers of information through these spaces, can make it difficult to cut through and sort through, well, what's a reliable source, or just where do I want to get my information from, right? What should I rely on? And stay focused on those topics. It's really tough. So this is the context within which we academics are faced as we tread into this space. This session will cover a lot of information, practical information, very practical about what is out there, what are the tools and platforms out there. People share experiences and examples of how they're using it. Some specific topics, the importance of your own web identity, strategizing your presence for intended audiences, tailoring your content to the appropriate platform, and so on. And our panelists, while they're experts in their own ways, they recognize that faculty have wide-ranging goals for how they want to use new media. We may not all have the goal of having, 10,000 followers. We might have 10,000 followers, but that, some of us, that may not be what we want to use social media for, right? And so we have designed today's presentation and discussion to be appropriate for kind of whatever kind of level you're at with your thinking about how you want to be in this space, whether you're, public intellectual celebrity type, or someone who's on the news and lots of followers, or whether you're someone who's just sort of putting your toe in the water with this and, how best should I use Twitter? I have an account, but I'm not sure how to use it. So we have all of those kind of, that full range covered in our presentation today. So I'll introduce, and we can welcome our panelists, and then we'll go right into the presentation. We're all seated up here. I'll start with Eva Penar there. And I'll turn the slide so you see our photos. Eva is the Director of Marketing and Communications at the Chicago Community Trust, where she's involved in practices that support the vision for all trust marketing and communications activities. She has developed the branding, messaging, and marketing for their We Are Chicago campaign for the Trust Endowment. She was instrumental in creating the ambassador program for On the Table, which is a large public conversations project that our institute partnered with the Trust on. We designed and fielded a follow-up survey to the participants of that project. And she designed the ambassador program, which helps use social media to promote and facilitate online conversations parallel to and related to On the Table. That campaign led to 17 million digital impressions for that particular initiative. And at some point, she's going to tell us what that means, digital impressions. So thank you, Eva, for being here. Welcome. And then Kim Richards, here is the Associate Director and Center for the Advancement of Teaching Learning Communities, or the TLC here at UIC. She joined UIC in 2007, having been a teaching assistant and research assistant at the College of Education. And she's a K-12 learning strategist, evaluator, curriculum designer for various youth media, arts, educational organizations, and CPS. Prior to 2007, she worked as a K-12 reading and social studies teacher and curriculum coordinator in Chicago. Kim also hosts, in her role, a wide range of workshops for faculty on the use of technology. I've attended one of them. They were great. So thank you, Kim, for being here. Welcome. And we have Nate Phillips, Assistant Professor, Curriculum Instruction, College of Education. And Nate is interested in geographies of literacy learning, particularly youth learning. He studies youth spatial literacies and media literacies in and out of school, across virtual landscapes, including multiple media. He's particularly interested in these literacies and mobilities as they relate to the possibilities for young people to actively and critically participate in civic processes. So let's welcome Nate. Nate is also an active user on Twitter, as we all are, and we have our Twitter handles there. And we encourage you, since this is about the use of social media and new media, to log on to Twitter or create a Twitter account if you have one, if you don't have one, and follow us and tweet about this event. And you can use the hashtags on the previous screen. Hashtag UIC Learning, which is Kim's hashtag associated with her center, and IRRPP 101 as the second hashtag for IRRPP. So you have us all there for our Twitter handles. Okay, I expect our presentation to last 30 to 40 minutes, and as I mentioned, there'll be opportunities for Q&A along the way and at the end. So I'm going to turn it over first to Kim, who's going to start with the first slide here. Oh, and I forgot to mention one thing. Eva is a UIC alum, so we always appreciate having UIC alum back.
I am as well.
Oh, you are too? I'm sorry, Kim. Thank you. So,
Can't stay away.
great products of this great university. All right, go ahead.
So we are trying to think about different entry points or access points for faculty, and the biggest reason to maybe consider getting involved is social amplification, right? Folks familiar with that one? Just so, show of hands, or just so I can get a sense of what we're feeling here. But it's basically taking your voice and amplifying it and connecting it to different networks. So the most common ones for faculty are Mendeley, ResearchGate, Academia.edu. I thought this was a really great statistic, right? A lot of you are producing really compelling and wonderful research. At the very least, let's get it out, right? And at the same time, what these networks will do for you, you can follow other scholars and academics whose work you want to stay current on. And every time they upload a new paper or they have something new cooking, you get a notification. It's a great way, if you're a doc student, it's a great way to get familiar and build your intellectual community. If you're following particular scholars, you can see when they put something new up if they've got something going on. You can meet other colleagues. So it's a great way to just stay current. And when you start publishing and creating your work, you can put it up. So I was fortunate enough to publish 3 things in journals, and they still get hits, and I still get a little Google Analytics saying somebody in Sri Lanka, downloaded your paper. It's woohoo, okay. And that's how it's connected to this idea of search engine optimization, right? So what it's doing is it's going to send you analytics and tell you that people are actually reading your research and they're passing it along. And I think that's really exciting, right? Because we spend a lot of time, years sometimes, publishing for a journal, and then we think, is anybody else going to read this other than the editor, right? So it's validating knowing that your work is actually traveling and amplifying across to other places. And I love getting notifications about colleagues and scholars who are writing, and I can stay current in the work as well. So I would just recommend, at the very least, for those of you who are new to this game, at least check out one of these sites and get yourself on there and see what's up. Some things that come up. Should I put something up that isn't published? My recommendation is don't put anything up that hasn't been secured by a journal and has been named yours. Because the reality is, if you put something up that's a rough draft and it isn't locked in, people can take your right. It's open for the taking. So I think treat it like a near published space. You don't want to put up something you're just playing around with. So it's not a blogging. These aren't blogging sites, and Eva's going to touch on blogging a little later. So this is where you would put like near finished or finished work, okay? And I don't know if there are questions before I move on, but this is sort of what we're calling the first entry point for academics. Yes, okay.
I mean, I'm also curious in academia. I always wonder what are the differences between the two, like different disciplines may use but you're stronger in some other ones, or you need to be in all of them. I mean, can you talk about differences?
You know, I think that's a great point. I'm only familiar with academia.edu, but you're absolutely right. ResearchGate tends to be big in the STEM fields. So I was turned on to that by folks in computer science and engineering. Never heard of it before. So I think you're right, Federico, like certain platforms are more relevant to certain intellectual communities. For the work I was in, it was academia.edu. I don't know if other folks can speak to that. That's just what I've gathered, but I think that's really smart. And I don't think you have to be on all of them. I think you want to be on the ones where your people are, you know, where's your intellectual community? Where are your people who are publishing the work that you're into and whose work, you know, you want to follow and you want them to see you? So that would be the advice I would give.
Just one quick follow-up to Federico's question. Just this week on Twitter, someone who I follow as an academic reported, kind of sent out some information about academia.edu, that it's, that it's a for-profit kind of venture, and urging academics not to be there. I point that out to sort of identify a lot of the tensions that are part of all of this stuff that we're talking about. So I didn't follow that thread. I have a lot of stuff on academia.edu, have made connections with people there, have found work and connected with scholars based on the things they've posted. It's been a place for me, but that made me need to rethink that and make a decision about that. What do I think about that? So anyway, that just points to some tensions that I didn't even realize until this week around, and haven't spent a lot of time looking into kind of those differences.
So putting up published work, I think, is important because it's yours. So I think that's really important. It's not a space to workshop ideas with colleagues. It's really more of like, this is getting published in this journal, check it out. That would be my advice. And that might protect people from a for-profit or fear of being exploited, right? I mean, they're all for-profit. I mean, let's be honest here. These are all going to be for-profit platforms we're going to show you. So I think that's part of the reality. Facebook, you can buy shares in it. Twitter too. Like so I think that's something we can talk about and debate. But right now, I don't know of any not-for-profit mass socially networked platform out there. Right, okay. If anybody else
is. Let's say if your work is more on the creative side, as if you want to write a essay related to what's going on politically in the disability community, can you still use academia.edu to share your work, or is it mostly focused on work for academic journals?
Excellent question. So what I've gathered going on academia.edu, it is leaning more academic and journals. So we would call this the formal writing space, and I say that in like quotes because like clearly there are formal spaces to publish. But again, I would say if you're publishing somewhere, like your work's going to get published and it's secured with someone, I think academia.edu is a great place to say, hey, it's in here, oh, and I want you to be aware of it. I think you may have to check and make sure the journals are okay with you doing that, but typically they'll be happy because you're sending traffic to them as a publisher. But if you're publishing in like an arts or creative writing journal or publication and your work's been published, then I would put that out there to your community that you're doing that.
And I would say, when we get into the other platforms, you may want to think about whether they are more suited for that particular kind of sort of writing or product.
Yeah, I would say if you're interested in like teaching at a university or college setting and also networking amongst folks who are in those worlds, academia.edu is a great place to go because you're getting your work out and you're connecting with other people, and that's really important, right? Especially those who are on the job hunt or looking for getting tenure, that's a great way to just at least make those connections. So I'm not sure if that may not fit with what your intentions are with your piece, right? So I think that's really important as we go forward. Think about what it is you want. Intentionality is everything. Like, what do you want to achieve when you're in the space? Why are you publishing, creating, and consuming in the space? What is the goal, right? So with that, I will pass on to Ava.
Great. Thank you. Do you want to do the slides for me? Can you do that? Thanks. So the Chicago Community Trust, I'm in the marketing communications department, and a few years ago we had an aha moment where we realized that our website needed to be content focused, and we wanted to start creating content. So, when I was first hired, I was the manager of public relations, and with the journalism landscape shrinking, we realized that we had to share the good news, and we had to write it, we had to create it, we had to promote it. So the way that we use social media is primarily for engagement and to drive visitors to our website. So what I'm going to share with you with all these different platforms that we use at the Trust is how we get people to our website, because that is our priority, to get people to read the thought leadership that our program officers write, that our colleagues write about the various topics, and we want people to go to our website from a philanthropy standpoint. So Facebook is the lead, for social media platforms. Everybody primarily is on Facebook. I was surprised to see the number. We just found, this is the updated number, that 80% of adults from 18 to 50 are on Facebook and are using it. The way that we use Facebook is storytelling and content sharing. So we will put a description of one of our content pieces. And this example here is amazing because we had 51 shares of this article. It was the #1 in our top 5 most read stories for 2016. And it was shared 51 times. On average, our posts are probably shared like 10 and under. Like if we hit 10 shares, we're really happy. And for us, it's not really like we want all these followers. We want that engagement. We want that discourse. So we really hope that there's comments, and this one was shared, so we're like, okay, this is wonderful. There wasn't that many comments per se in this, but people were really, intrigued with this article and everything. The next vehicle that we use is Instagram, and our Instagram is actually interesting, and it's very campaign focused this year. We commissioned for our centennial year, we commissioned 5 photographers to go around the region and take photos. And we created this photo book called We Are Chicago. And what we did was we decided to share it through Instagram, because Instagram is mainly a photo sharing tool, a social media. Like if you go, I love National Geographic. I love the Chicago Tribune has a history one. So they pull photos from like their archives and everything. So this is one that, you use hashtags also. But we were like, well, we can go in our vaults and like go in our photo archives and pull photos. But for our centennial celebration, we decided we have this book, but not everybody has access to this book. So let's show these beautiful photos. And we're actually going to be kicking off a contest next week where we're going to send people, the winners. It's going to be crowdsourcing in the sense that we're going to ask people to post their photo and use our hashtag, We Are Chicago, and the most likes, they'll actually get the physical book. So it's all going to like another aspect to see how that's going to work. And we're experimenting here. Like what we do at the Trust is all experimental. And that's what's beautiful about social media. You try something with one thing and it works, and you're surprised, like you get really good metrics. And then on another day when no news is going on, all of a sudden like, things from yesterday start going up because, nobody's saying anything. So I encourage you to like experiment, use different hashtags, use different tools and platforms and see what works. And you'll find that, secret ingredient for your reports and for what you want to promote out there. So then the next one, Twitter. Twitter is a microblog platform. So there's a question.
Back to the Facebook one.
Sure.
I have a question.
So I thought it was really interesting what you said, that the 51 shares meant more to you than, say, 50 comments. Or you didn't say, but like, I guess I'm wondering how you gauge or assess engagement and what it is about shares that was appealing to you as opposed to comments. In part because, I think oftentimes we think that comment is the main way that we can understand people's engagement. But also, I have to say, having written things, there's also so much it feels so dangerous in comments. Comments are so vexed.
Yes.
And hard to handle as the person being commented on. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the model that you're talking about there.
So thank you for pointing that out. So what happened on that specific day, we noticed that our engagement and our followers after those shares, so a lot of people that shared this specific article, that increased our followers. So we started having engagement with people that were new to our followers. And then there were comments from people. We noticed activity from people that if you would have shared this, your world never was exposed to the trust, and then all of a sudden they're starting to engage with us. So that was really interesting for us. And I think it's important, the comment factor too, but this was like ballpark. Like, we were like, wow, 51 shares. This never happens for us. And then I'm in touch with other Marcom folks at community foundations, and you don't really get that many shares for the stuff that we write about. Because, it's sad, but when we share good news, it's like people don't, you get more comments when something's more conflict, or controversial, et cetera. So this was a really great, we saw the metrics. And it's interesting, I'm still having a hard time, digesting what good metrics are, what are important. When we first started, it was everyone was followers. We need 10,000 followers. That was a goal for me when I started. I was 10,000 followers. Well, great, we could have all these followers. There were great examples of people have tons of followers, but there's no engagement with them. They're just following you. They're not communicating with you. They're not, are they going to become our future donors? Are they actually we had a big campaign with On the Table, What You Do Matters. Are they the future philanthropists? Are they doing good? For us, it's it's hard to, we're not selling a product, but we want people to do good out there. So it's hard for us to measure that, with social media.
Right, but in that respect, it's actually the same in the academy.
Right.
We're, no matter how much we'd like to think, or we are told that we're selling something, we're actually not. Right. So, or we're not getting any money from it. Maybe that's maybe the university is selling things for us. But I just think this question of comment, I guess I would just like to hear at some point the panel really engage comment as a function of what we think of as engagement, but also the very complicated nature of comment at this moment in time, and what it means to make a decision to be on social media means, in part, you have to be prepared to get hate.
Yeah. So Twitter. So we again use it as a microblog. We push it out to get people to our website. We used to have Twitter chats for some of our On the Table and engagement, and those worked okay for us. We didn't really have that much engagement. It seemed like when we would do Twitter chats, it was pretty much me and my 5 friends that I asked to join the Twitter chat. So I'm not sure how successful they are right now, but from an academia perspective, it could possibly be something good to get engagement and to get that collaboration out there. And then LinkedIn. LinkedIn is something that we're not as active as I wish we could be, primarily because I'm still hoping that I'm pushing our program officers to develop more thought leadership pieces. And that's where we would post most of these articles on here for the business and the networking and influential landscape that it is. So we're not as big. We do use LinkedIn, obviously, to post jobs, as most people do and everything, but this is something I want us to like experiment a little bit more with. And then Medium is something that we are not active on, and I put it up there just because I thought from, you know, from your world that this might be a really good place to start adding, you know, your published journals. You know, there is a tag system, and there's 25 million monthly visitors. I thought that metric was really good for something that's pretty new out there. And that, you know, that would touch another audience that's just not like what Kim mentioned with the other tools.
But I would say for your question, this might be a great platform for you.
Yeah.
Or if you're workshopping ideas, or you want to take like a heavy jargony research paper and translate it to like the public, this is a great space to put something out. Or if this is where you get to dip your toe as a public intellectual. And I would even argue on LinkedIn, business leaders need to hear from academics. They want to hear from you. They want to know what research is out there. Learning is really popular. Like they have chief learning officers now. And I follow Deloitte's Benson Institute. Yeah, I mean, this is really hot. You know, they call it micro learning is the new buzzword. I mean, they're hungry for, you know, data on just not, you know, robust knowledge, because in the business world, let's face it, if they do research, it's not in depth and thoughtful and like it's quick and fast and nerdy, right? So I think that's where you may say, well, LinkedIn, I don't belong there, but they might actually want to hear from you know, and Medium is a great place to make your work maybe more accessible. Or if you're a creative writer, this is the place you're gonna begin to publish your work that could lead to a book or lead, you know, to something bigger.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are also many other blogging sites like WordPress, blog,
Right.
blog,
Sure.
stuff like that. Do you have a preference compared to Medium, or you know,
Ours is on, our website is on Blogspot, so we use that as a content. So we don't use the other blogs, and we encourage our program officers to do it, but I don't have that much like expertise and knowledge in the like blog world, like which, you know, if Blogger is better or which WordPress or whatever.
So TL's our website, we use WordPress as our website platform, but in terms of blogging, it does zero for us in terms of traffic. I would say Medium, what's great about it is it's very active and it's interactive, so users, like readers, come in and actually tab a sentence in your post and comment on it.
Right.
It's like SoundCloud for writers. I don't know if you're familiar with SoundCloud, but it's like a music sound place, and you can like, you know, tag a section and say that was amazing, or what if you tried this? Medium is the same way. You can actually flag and annotate in the text, and because you can tag it, that just gets more viewers. And then as Eva wrote in her slide, there's an algorithm that will actually push what they consider good content. WordPress doesn't have any of that. So our blog is dead. I have to use Twitter, I have to use Facebook to get people to check out our blogs, because WordPress doesn't really do that. I use it for our website. So I would use WordPress to build your site, and like you would Chicago News Trust, they come to your site, but then use Medium to like actually get people there.
And that's the thing, I think you want to use all the different, the ones that make sense, but like Facebook and Twitter, you're going to, let's say you do write that blog entry, you need to use the social media vehicles to push people in, and also from a conversation. Like, you know, you need, like, we use social media a lot to listen, so we will, I think that's what people forget to do with social media. It's like we search words like philanthropy, we search Chicago, we have buzzwords that we constantly are searching. You know, any initiative that we're involved in, we upload the people's like proper names in our search term. We use Sprout Social as a tool to help us monitor everything. We were using Cision for the past like year and a half, but Sprout Social is, you know, a tool that like gives us updates and the reports and the metrics, and then we can say, you know, like let's say we wanted to know what Joe's doing in the university, we can put that in there, and we're like lurking and listening. So that way, if there was some kind of conflict, or if there's an opportunity for collaboration, more importantly, then we know what they're doing, and then we can like have that engagement organically through social media, and then hopefully those people become like your free agents that help evangelize the work that you're doing. And I'll go into like the evangelist that we, like the ambassador program a little bit later, and like that can give you an example of how we like harnessed individuals outside of the trust to help us get the word out about a program.
And WordPress has built-in analytics too. So if you wanted to watch traffic or even see what pages people are visiting, you can actually see that, you know, what time. And, so that's another functionality.
Does Medium have analytics? Does Medium have analytics?
I think it does, yeah, because I know it has, yeah, it has the algorithms. I didn't have enough time to like jump into Medium, so I apologize. But yeah. Does someone else know? Is anyone else using Medium? Yeah.
I don't know the answer to the analytics question, but I did want to comment and say that what you can do is you can still use WordPress as your primary blog because it's your branding, it's your space, and you can repost to Medium so that more people can see what you've done and what you've written on Medium, and link to your primary website or blog.
Exactly. Yeah, because WordPress alone will get you the traffic. So you could just like, which is
Good. And then hashtags.
Have you seen the opposite? That WordPress can't get you the traffic? No.
we're saying.
And I also wanted to comment on the blog, like the medium, like the platforms. I did like a whole lot of different research on like which platforms are better for which, and I've actually, so I have 2 WordPress blog sites, but I've tried Blogger, I've tried Blogspot, I've tried something, I don't know, something that has Lemonade or something like that. I don't know. Apricot.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a business. I don't know. In my experience, I had a really hard time learning how to use those websites. WordPress makes it pretty easy for you to start a blog. Like they have a lot of templates. They have community forums to help me answer questions. And if you email WordPress with a question, they will get back to you pretty quickly. So that's just been my experience. There's a blog post by her name is Lovey. She has a website, Awesomely Lovey, and then Awesomely Techie. She just released a New York Times bestselling novel, and she has a huge blog following. Anyway, so Awesomely Techie has an article on the differences between the different platforms to help you figure out what you want to do.
The other thing is that just for people who are at UIC, I mean, WordPress is the mechanism that we support. So there are systems in place and support in place to get support to build a WordPress site on the UIC WordPress. So I just think people should know that, because, and we could talk about, maybe we can't talk about whether you should have your own WordPress site or whether you should be on the UIC WordPress site, but maybe we shouldn't talk about that.
Yeah, we can, but that. If you use UIC,
then you get the support, yeah.
But we're going to talk about things you have to be careful of when you're under the institution.
Yeah, so I just want to say though that there is a great deal of WordPress support here also, to that point.
So let me just jump into hashtags, and then we're going to pause, right? Or maybe, I don't know. Okay. So hashtags, you should be really thoughtful before you actually create your own hashtag. Search that hashtag, because there could be already some other noise out there, and that doesn't really align with what you're trying to do. So the other thing that I think someone raised an accessibility question, or what I learned last year we had on the table all lowercase for our hashtag. And I was at a conference, and if you are a person that uses JAWS or a reader, because you are experiencing social media through hearing, your reader is going to say on the table versus on the table if you don't capitalize. So we have been trying to make sure that our social media is accessible to everybody. So we are working with, we've actually worked with Great Lakes here at UIC. Petersburg has been really helpful, and our ADA initiative. So I just want you to be mindful, because we went out there, we had our, cab, our billboards, our ads and everything, and then I came back from a conference and I found out that it's really important to use camel case and camel capes for hashtags if you want everybody to experience it. So that's you want to use capital. So on should be O capital, N lowercase, T capital, and then T for table. So on the table, because so like right here, Chicago Community Trust. So JAWS, like a reader, will actually read that as 3 words, versus this is jumbled. And someone, so it's that experience and accessibility that we didn't, when you start using it, you're just following everyone and everything. So I was able to go to a conference that had a panel about accessibility and social media. And we're actually going to have a panel at the Trust with this initiative that I'm involved in. N10 is the nonprofit technology network. It's an association for individuals that use technology that work in the nonprofit sector. So members include IT folks, marketers, et cetera. And we hold 501 Tech Club every month at the Trust. And we've had sessions on storytelling, and it's just for people that want to come in and learn how to be better content writers. So we will have one about accessibility, and I can share that with Yvonne, and you can send it, and you could just go on Eventbrite, and the more the merrier. They're held at the office during the day, like during lunch. So, yeah.
So the hashtag UIC Learning, just so you know, was created during the Social Media's Learning Tool Workshop, and we're using it with the TLC as a way to encourage, and at Tech Teach. So anytime faculty are engaging in professional learning, we use it. Then if you look at the hashtag, you can see a story about all these different faculty members interacting with our workshops, with conferences, and it's another way to showcase impact. So just to speak to the first bullet point. Okay, so here's, I think, where we're gonna have real talk, okay? So we've shown you, we've shown you like a bunch of platforms, and a lot of you are already critically engaging and asking good questions. So here it is at the end of the day. You have to come in being very intentional about why you're here, what do you want to accomplish, who are you going to be in this space, social identity. It's no different than our public lives, face-to-face and embodied reality, virtual reality, slightly different. It's a little more dangerous because you don't see facial expressions. You can be more anonymous, and so sometimes we can get cavalier and a little, I don't know, easy breezy with our interactions, and that's where things can get kind of slippery, right? So it's really important to think about social identity. Nothing's going to be deleted, okay? We can hit delete, but there's still a record, just so you know, right? We know that. We know it's awesome. What you share about yourself is a message. You're a brand online. We're no different than Chicago Community Trust. You know, when we put our name out there, we're building a brand. People are building perceptions about who we are. So that's why it's really important to understand the platform and really master what it means to participate. Can you edit a post? Can you delete a post? Who's going to see your post? So Twitter has a different following rule than Facebook, right? Twitter's kind of interesting in the sense you could be following someone, but if they're not following you, they're not going to see what you're doing necessarily, right? So there's just different ways of who sees you, how they see you, who are you seeing. So it's important to understand that. Privacy settings are really important. So going in and asking yourself, how much do I want to expose of who I am, my personal life, and then my public professional life? I used to teach pre-service teachers and K-12 teachers, and I'd say to them, I really don't think you should put your name out there and friend students. If you want to be on Facebook and friend parents and students, have Mrs. Richards. Don't have Kim Richards. You don't want to start blurring those lines, especially if you're a teacher or somebody in the public life. And if you're academic, you're in the public life, right? So I've encouraged folks who are teachers or in a more public-facing profession, to consider a personal profile so you can post pictures of your kids or your vacation. Maybe you can post something a little off-base to make people laugh, but you can just kind of be more relaxed. Your professional self, you can be a little bit more guarded or structured, if you want to do that. If you want it all flowing, then you have to be very mindful of that you're blurring your personal and your professional. And so it may not be a good idea, and we'll talk about content, to post just everything, or do you want everybody knowing that you went on vacation 2 weeks ago? These are things to really think thoughtfully about. And you can have a personal profile and up the personal's private settings so that only certain people are going to see what you're doing. And you create your safe space. Because those of us who are active, that safe space disappears really quickly. We've already touched on trolling and comments, people being very nasty. And it is nasty out there. And especially if you're going to say provocative, controversial things, it gets nasty. And I think for our mental health, it is good to have a safe space. I disagree with saying just leave social media altogether, because I think that's problematic, because my friends post events and baby pictures. I want to stay in with what's happening, but I sometimes don't want to hear about politics all the time. So I would really encourage thinking about that as a strategy. I would pause. Are there any questions about that? Yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to develop a strategy for who I follow on Twitter.
Yep.
So whenever someone follows me, I go and look at them.
Good.
And if they're a consultant that I know I'm never going to want to look at, I don't follow them back. Now, is that the way you should do it? I'm trying to follow only things that are very pertinent to the business that I'm trying to promote.
So this is a business, right?
Yeah.
I think can be really different strategies around that. I'll talk a little bit about mine. So in terms of following, I think it's a little bit different. People choose to follow you for whatever reason. You might have reason to follow something that's not connected to your professional work. So I'll share this in a minute when I talk about mine. I follow a bunch of stuff about sports. That's my content reading of Twitter. Like, I'm interested in that. So if it's not something you're interested in reading or don't want to see it, then I don't think you need to follow it. I know less about the sort of tit for tat, like I follow you, you follow me, and gaining followers. I'm not really trying to play that game, so I don't know what that might mean, if you should be doing that or not. I don't know. I don't do that. This is really interesting. Right now, I've been trying to be very much on Twitter, and like 6 people who are media strategists or social media strategists have followed me, I guess because I've used words that they must be looking for, that this panel's about social media. So I didn't follow any of them back. That's kind of what I'm doing, I guess. Yeah. But I'm definitely not a consultant or strategist. I'm just saying this is what I do.
Well, the point is, do I want to get as many followers as possible or not? And I think I want to be judicious.
Right.
Okay. There's 3 questions.
Yeah. I was wondering, let's say if you want to follow particular news sources related to your field, if you want to use a public profile from any of the websites, would it be wise if people could use the mainstream news sources, or which suggest people use news sources from either whatever news sources from your field or any, I don't know how to phrase it besides neutral sources.
So people, you can follow whoever you want. Nobody will know who you're following unless you actually retweet them. Okay. So like, if you log into my Twitter, I joke, I shared this at my workshop, I curate my Twitter so it's like politics, Zen quote, comedian. Because I want, when I go in and I have to digest what's happening in the world, I need a Zen quote to calm me down, and then I need something to make me laugh, and then I can take in the next bite. You know what I mean? But you can't see. If you went into my handle and you looked at my page, you wouldn't see it. You'll only see what I chose to retweet or put out there. So you can follow whoever you want, and you can you want to intentionally follow people to curate your page. But who you retweet, you have to be very careful of, right? And I went through my tweet and I'm like, oh, oops, I don't know what people are gonna think about that one. You know, it was toilet paper that had Trump Pence on it, and you know, I was like, well, people are gonna see that on my news feed, you know, and that might offend people. But, you know, but that's part of what you would see because I actually retweeted that. I thought it was funny. So you have to think about, you know, what do you want your people to see? But you get to control that through, and at least on Twitter, through what you tweet or retweet, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I was also thinking about more so if you want to either want to share news related to your field or also use, I guess, the news to supplement what you share already on social media. I was wondering which choices one should follow. The reason I said that because I understand that for some they may have their particular news sources, but then it may not be as transparent for people who actually want to see your work. It may come across as your opinion only as opposed to such transparent.
I'll just say, you know, with regard to news and things like that, I guess it's, you kind of have to decide what you want people to see and know about you, right? And so if part of that involves that news, right, and I'm sure you're going to be selective maybe about whatever news you're sharing, then that's what you do. It's sort of like you're designing this frame and filter, and then you're putting inside it, right, these different things about you. So it's really more about, for you, whether it fits, right, and not so much about, do I follow this one or that one or that one, right? I think it's it's very strange. When you think about identity, we are who we are. You're in a room, you're having a conversation with someone, your personality comes through naturally, right? Online, you're designing and controlling your personality and being very intentional, right? So your personality would automatically filter in person something in that space that you wouldn't want to say, right? Or that doesn't matter for the conversation. Online, all of a sudden, you have to think about that, or you have to force it and make it happen, right? And so I guess that's a long way of saying, to answer your question, it sort of varies and depends on who you want to be in that space, right? Turn it back to.
You had a question, Doc.
Yeah, so as a marketing strategy, right? Following people. So on Instagram, right, folks do that all the time. They'll follow you, and then, so because it draws attention to their profile, and then you can look at it and see if you want to follow back. And then, if you don't follow back, they will unfollow, right? So, but that's, you know, a completely different community, completely different, you know. But similar things could happen on Twitter too. So if you do, you know, like when I was trying to build a following, I think you know, you can search hashtags for what you're interested in and look at, you know, who's doing it and follow them so that they can like see what you're doing and, you know, find you interesting enough. And
right. The other strategy is use the @ sign.
Yeah, exactly.
And then put their name. So
Yeah.
if you want to make sure, like if I want to follow you, or I really want you to see what I wrote, I can put your handle. It's called a handle. The @ sign with a name, it's a handle. I could put her handle, and and I'd be like, hey, you know, and if she retweets it, then you're like, oh my God, I'm a winner. You know, that's like the ultimate, like, you know, I got retweeted by Kim Kardashian or whatever, I don't, but,
Right.
but that's the strategy. If you can get people to say, look at me, by putting the @ sign, right?
Yeah. I just actually just sent an email asking somebody to do that.
Good.
So.
That's smart. And then as writers, or people who are producing new knowledge, I think that's a really smart strategy, you know, and like Nate, you know, when we go to con, we're always shouting out like, hey, at Nate Phillips, just like, da-da-da, like hashtag. And so when you're at conferences, you can like shout out to each other and be like, I'm at this great talk, you should be here, you know, that's good karma, that's good communication, relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll just, sorry, Jen. So like at conferences, I'm very intentional about doing that too, and like tagging whomever is like in this, as a speaker, just so that we can just share what we're learning. But when Ava DuVernay liked and retweeted my tweet, I thought I was a superstar. Let me tell you, I told everybody about it. Yeah, I was like, oh, at first I thought she just liked it, but then I was looking at my messages, and I was like, she actually retweeted it as well. I was so excited. But yeah, so we definitely want to just be intentional about, you know, your communications.
In the back, she's got her name.
Yes.
Thank you.
Patient.
I'm sorry.
Super basic, because I'm not on social media at all, and I could barely handle email, so this is really overwhelming. But I've just published something with the press, and they suggested creating a Facebook page for this manuscript. And I guess I'm not really seeing, like, if you don't have any friends or followers, like, why would you do that? And also, can you track who looks at it on Facebook?
What journal is it?
Yeah.
It's a press, it's a.
Oh, it's a book?
Yeah.
Oh, to promote a book.
Well, I think that what they're trying to do is probably like create a Facebook group page, possibly, or an author page for you. I think that's probably what they were suggesting, because like that's something that is really intentional with Facebook. Like if it's your profile page, or it's an organization page, or it's a political page, like whatever you set up, you need to make sure. So like I think like this, they maybe were suggesting that you set up an author page for your manuscript, and then everything that you do focuses on that manuscript and you're the author, versus if you go, you know, because a lot of people just think that they can create a profile for a school. You know, like there's this Polish school that I've been seeing that, well, I went to Saturday Polish school, so I keep seeing them as pop up as a profile versus an organization. So, and Facebook I know is supposed to get, you know, come down on people and all that stuff. And it's better because when you're an organization, then you get, you know, you're following the rules on Facebook, and you don't want to start off not following the right rules and everything. And then it's easier to navigate that way. So I think that's maybe what they were suggesting. And then if you decide to open up a Facebook page, you can tell all your friends, hey, go and like my author page. A lot of politicians will do that, you know, when they're running for politics, they'll like go on, get their friends, their 1,200 friends, to then like get the word out. And then it shows up that the 5 of us just liked, you know, Chris Kennedy or whoever it is. And then we can see that your friends and family can see that you started liking it. And it's also the same thing with organizations or group pages, you know. People can see a person's activity if you leave it as a privacy setting as open. And some people do that so that way that encourages other people to see, oh, I just liked Hazel, this really cute store, you know, at Montrose and Damon. Or I just liked UIC. Then everyone's like, oh, why is Eva liking UIC? I like what Eva reads. I like her comments on Facebook and stuff, so I might start, you know, oh, I like this manuscript. Oh, I think I'm going to go into that world, you know? So that's for, you can track who's looking at it. You can see exactly on your privacy settings. So like if you start, and that's a whole thing that we're really not going to get into today, but I would, you should Google like basic settings and privacy settings, etc. You can control like your posts, like who sees what. You know, if you wanted to just share something with like your sorority friends, then, you know, you can tag it and just your sorority friends can see it. You know, it's wild what you can do, how you can control who engages with you and interacts with you.
Can I make a comment about
Yeah.
that? I have a Facebook page for my business, and when I put out a new product, I will also buy for $30 a Google ad, and it will get me 10,000 hits. I mean, a print ad costs me $3,000. I get so much more out of a $30 advertising budget on Facebook. So you could really push it to a lot of people.
Okay, so we want to get to things. You gotta let us know quick, because we're at UIC. I just had to throw this slide up. Again, act like you would act face-to-face at UIC, right? If you are representing the institution, this is going back to the WordPress comment, if you use UIC's WordPress templates, you are going to be under this kind of scrutiny. So if you want true, free, open speech and be you, I wouldn't use it. But if you're representing UIC, you really have to be mindful of representing UIC. Social identity theft, something to think about. Because you're a researcher, because you're an academic, people might want to be fake you or imposter you. So you kind of want to check that out. We've already talked about this, so yeah. This is something quickly to go over. Don't fall into these rabbit holes. When you're engaging in social media, there are trolls, there are people out there who want to incite anger. They want to get you riled up. They want you to say really off-the-cuff things. That's what they're there to do. So get to your Zen, quiet, peaceful place, pray, whatever, but avoid, some of these things. And satire, fake news is really hot right now, right? Be careful what you repost or retweet. Your reputation's going to go down if you retweet something that's from something that's fake. So be very careful about what I'm guilty of that. I've done that. I'm like, oh man, I got to delete it, right? Because it's like, I don't want people seeing that, and they'll say, oh, we can't trust what she puts. So things to consider, okay? All right.
Can you control the thing, Kim? Thanks, sorry about that. So I'm very quickly going to do this. Just essentially, this is one case, a person on Twitter, me. Over the last about 8 years since I joined Twitter, and the point is not to express any kind of expertise. It's kind of to speak to people who say, this all looks really overwhelming. How do I do this? And just say, here's some things I'm trying to do. I'm not, haven't ever consulted with somebody about how I should be thinking about it or doing it. This is just what I try and do. So I'm going to kind of quickly just share some things that I'm up to and tell you that it's still really difficult. So as an example, I wanted to, as much as possible, be present on Twitter and here doing this. That means doing things that appear to be really socially awkward, like on my phone like this while other people are talking, taking pictures of them as they're like right next to me. And so I think just to point out that that's like what it means to do this kind of stuff. To be engaged in a space that's not here, but might potentially have other kinds of ways of interacting. And, oh gosh, knocked it over like 8 times. And some of us have been interacting without even necessarily knowing who each other are by retweeting and even during this conversation. It's also 140 characters is really hard for me. So I just treated something that is almost not readable that I really wanted to say about what Eva kind of taught us about accessibility, which I didn't know. Norma had a really nice way of putting it, and I had this way, I always have too many words. So it takes me a time to edit them and think through them and try and get it down. So all that to say, those are part of my story. It's not super easy or something I do, that just comes kind of quickly. So I'll walk really quickly through this. The next page, this is just my kind of homepage. I didn't curate this at all. I didn't delete anything. This is just where I'm at. So whatever that means. Beginning with a Bernie Sanders tweet about voter fraud. And I usually don't do that. I rarely jump into that sort of political game, so you can see where I was thinking recently. Go ahead, Kim. One thing to say is this is important about, in terms of your identity, who you are. This, for me, is more probably poetic than useful. I'd quote a favorite poet of mine, very connected to what I think about and am interested in, but it doesn't say, for example, anything about UIC. It doesn't say that I'm a professor. If I were really thinking strategically about attracting students or trying to make a name, I would probably change that. At the moment, at least, I like it. I do have that URL that links to some professionally related kind of research that I'm engaged in. So that is a place somebody could go and see where I'm at. Thanks, Kim. We've talked about this, following and followers, that your stats are kind of visible. So you can see that I follow way more people than follow me. So that's like a 2-to-1 plus ratio, 2.5 to 1. I have no idea what that means. Part of the reason that happens is I'm following all kinds of media outlets and a lot of people around sports, which isn't something I ever tweet about. So it's not a place those people are going to follow me. So I'm using it as stuff that I'm reading, but they're not going to follow me because I'm not producing any content related to that conversation. It's a place I'm just reading and not writing. This kind of recently, and this is a cool move, I think, by some of our journals. So our really top-notch journal in literacy, the Journal of Literacy Research, just published something that I did with a couple colleagues, and they recorded these short videos where we introduce it. So if you click on this video, it's the three of us talking about this journal article that we've written and what it's about. Go ahead, Kim. So I wanted to kind of say, here's how I use Twitter. So really quickly, some things to do. To connect with colleagues and communities. One of the things Eva mentioned was a chat on Twitter. So this is an example from September. NCTE is the National Council of Teachers of English. They had this chat about Black girls' literacies. That means at that time, Sunday, September 18th, 8 o'clock Eastern, if you're interested in this, be online and have a conversation online. If you use the hashtag NCTE chat, other people will see what you're talking about. So that's one way to connect. Go ahead, Kim. This is like a colleague who posted something funny and me being really personal about it. Like what the Calvin and Hobbes cartoon says is, if you spend all day avoiding the things that you're supposed to be doing, that's kind of hard. And I said, like, this hits a little too close to home for me. Go ahead.
And what did you hit to make that answer appear with the message? That's why I'm having problems with that.
Yeah, so this is a reply.
Right. So you hit
as opposed to a retweet. And then when it comes up for other people, it looks like this.
Where's the reply button?
That's the arrow.
The arrow?
That's pointing
Okay.
left.
Yep.
I'm sorry, that's a very basic
Yeah,
question.
No, that's great.
It's a good question.
Right. So, and then the next one is retweet. So retweet might just be like sharing somebody else's thing out with commenting on it or not. Reply is like writing directly to that person. So this is an author, mentor, somebody I know, a kind of direct response to him, but also visible by others. I captured all of these while logged out of Twitter because I was interested to see, not being logged in, what's visible. So this is visible without me being logged in. This is visible to anybody.
And he's not following me, but hopefully that changed.
Well, it's me because I was logged out. Oh. I'm not following myself because I wasn't logged in. Okay. Right. Yeah, that's where that is. He does follow me. Again, connecting to colleagues. I'll sometimes do this. I don't know if anyone else does. Use the carbon copy, like CC, hey, this means like Jasmine, my friend who's a professor at NYU, you might want to check this out because she does stuff about math on the move. So I just kind of shared that with her. I use it to share what's happening in my classes. So this is a hashtag from a class here last semester, CI589, in which one of our students, that's Vaughn AR, Andrea, was doing a project. So this was happening in my class, and I just took a picture and tweeted it out in the middle of class so people can see kind of what's taking place in our class. We were using this product of Legos, this story visualizer, right? So I connected with them. And sometimes that means they might retweet it, which would be interesting. I don't think they did. I didn't go back and double check, but yeah. I use it to live tweet conferences and other presentations. We've talked about that a little bit. I try to be very intentional about that in conferences. So this is my colleague Becca, who's in our college, and I'll try and include mention, so this is Convergence D-Lab. Kim used to work there, a collaborator of ours, so that they could then go share that out as well. They know we're talking about them at the conference we're at. Oh yeah. Thank you. I don't even know if this is still true. At some point I learned. Okay. So if you start with an @ you're writing directly to that person. It's going to only go to Becca. If I put the period there, then Twitter recognizes it as a thing for everybody. So this will go out to everybody. Yeah. Okay, here is an example, just tweeting something somebody said, and then some response. So LRA 16 was our literacy research conference. You can see here, like, this is a struggle. He said this really beautiful thing, and I've got to turn it into words that, and I use punctuation, a lot of people don't. That's the English teacher in me, probably holding on to that a little bit. But, you know, truncating the ARE to the R, using the colon, which is not necessarily necessary, but that helps me to say that this is what he's saying. I needed to use the hashtag, so that means shortening other things. And then the reason I shared this one is there's some people who are also sitting at the conference who are responding. This was just a couple weeks ago. Susan Goldman, who's here in Learning Sciences professor, she was giving a talk at the Learning Sciences Research Institute. I took several pictures of her slides and then included those. And Twitter does this automatically. So I just said, add these 3 pictures, and it made this little collage. But she doesn't have a handle, so I just had to use her name. If she had a handle, that would probably be better. But then I tried to use this hashtag, which had Project Ready, which now in the future I will use capital letters. I didn't know to do that, because that's like connects to their work.
Should he do, it's an acronym too. Do you have to put them all caps?
Right, I don't know. RABI.
I think maybe.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I'm learning more and more about that, and like Facebook and Twitter are being so great because they're allowing like the captions and photo descriptions for individuals with access. So it's really amazing that this is a whole new world, and everybody is trying to be as inclusive as possible.
Yeah, that's great.
So I'll share with you all like if I hear anything.
Cool. Yeah.
Can I add a comment to that?
Yeah.
Another accessibility trick is instead of screenshots, actually trying to include, well, if you're going to do like a screenshot of a paragraph or like, you know, something from an article you read, also include the link so folks who are having read to them can go to the link and read it.
Yeah.
Well, we really talk about tiny bit URLs, but if you have a link and it's like super long, you can use tiny bit URL and shrink it. And that was through Twitter, right?
Yeah, and actually I think they're better now about even if you have a long one, they don't count it against you, all the characters, yeah. But this is a really important, I think, point too about a way that people get away with showing more text now. This is kind of a more recent practice, is to take a picture, screenshot of a paragraph. People use the like note function to write out a longer note, and then it's a picture, but you can have words in there. And people highlight things from articles that they've read and then post those. So that's a newer practice I haven't gotten into. And an example of like, you kind of learn how to speak this language. Like, oh, people are doing this, I need to like at some point try this out.
But that text wouldn't be searchable, just to say, so that is the flip side of it, is then you just have to be careful that you're not embedding what, I mean, I think that's the thing about live tweeting is that I was joking and saying like the only thing I use Twitter for is to live tweet things. It's a, how do you interpret and report?
Yeah.
Because that's actually what live tweeting is. And if you're doing that, you're not interpreting, you're just, I mean, it's not going to come up.
Right, yeah, that's great. And I think speaks to the attention of this whole thing, yeah. Kim, will you go back one? Just another thing that I do, this idea of work in the open is the way to talk about it, meaning with some collaborators at the Nature Museum and the Chicago History Museum, we're working on a project together. We're just sitting around, this is our meeting. Take a picture. Ani Schmidt, who works at the History Museum, is the one who tweeted this initially, but we try and do that to just say, here's work we're doing. And then I retweeted it to share this out, like we're in the midst of doing something. One of the things we do on the next one, because this is my sort of area and work, I try and tweet out things connected to events for youth, teachers, or researchers. So this is from a few days ago. The Field Museum has this upcoming thing for teens, so I try and post that stuff. Yeah.
Going back to the previous slide. So I'm in the ecology field, and a lot of ecologists do use it for this like ongoing collaboration. They'll like take a picture of their field work and stuff like that. Yeah. But I'm theoretical ecology, so I'm doing a lot of data and stuff like that. So then I have to take that data, convert it to a visually printed, nice way, and then you have to explain what's going on and stuff like that. So how would you navigate in a field that doesn't necessarily translate to like fluent easily?
Yeah, I think that's such a good question. And for example, like the way that some of us in this group think like working in the open is just like make all of our notes open on, via Google Docs that anybody can see. And that always feels to me like, who's gonna ever like look at all the piles of stuff we have? Like need to like think about curating it in a way and presenting it. And I think there are probably two different things. One is sort of the move to say we're doing this and have a record like this that's really just saying that, like we're working on something together, and potentially connect up to others in that way. And then another move that's around data collection, in which you might be under a lot of different kinds of responsibilities and regulations around IRB and what you can share and can't share, and how you're curating that a little bit differently. So I don't know if that answers it. Just to say yes, that's a problem, and I'm not sure the best way to approach it.
Can I say something
Yeah.
about that? I think it varies by field. You should look at what some of your colleagues have done. They've probably dealt with this problem or challenge as well. And then maybe just think about having a space online where that information gets dumped in its natural state.
Yeah.
That people who are familiar enough with it, that once they get in there, they're comfortable with looking at it that way. And then you use social media to figure out some kind of creative, punchy way to get them over there.
And we didn't talk about crowdsourcing, but that's another new media, data mining source. I helped code like craters on the moon for NASA because they started this crowd fund. So I can talk to you about that too, and then you would use Twitter to get people to go to that site to mine the data. So you use Twitter to get people to go to the thing,
We did that one. To share publications, we've talked about this already a little bit. So tagging my authors, a hashtag that's connected to it, and a link that people can go check it out. And this kind of amazingly really drove people to this piece in the first days, and I could track some of it because we had it on ResearchGate. But I mean, within the first few days, there was something like 60, 70 reads. I don't know what that means exactly, but people came and saw it.
Can you talk about that? So you uploaded it to ResearchGate.
Yeah.
Just talk about how that is connected to your whole ecosystem, maybe, because I think this is a great slide for this audience.
In this case, the journals, for now, have them open source. They're not always going to be unlocked like that, but I think because they're new, they were unlocked, so the link went right to the journal. But Amy, my co-author on this, put it on ResearchGate. I saw that, and then I clicked and said, yep, I'm a co-author, and it showed up on mine. And then people connected to it that way, either that I was already connected to, or then became connected to me because they saw that had been shared.
That's the benefit to using those platforms. I mean, everybody's making, all of it's for profit, to your point, Kim, but so many, academics, many of us have access through our libraries, but people outside of universities don't have access to the Journal of Social History or, gender problems or whatever it's called.
So useful for international colleagues.
Also.
Yeah, that's great. More just sharing publications and conversation around it. I do use this to showcase the College of Ed or UIC. I try and be intentional about that from time to time. Nobody told me to do that or how to do it or what to do, so in our conversation about that, but I try and say here's what we're up to. This was at a particular conference, just saying great work from our doc students and alumni. I use this is UIC Twitter handle there. Another example is one of my doc students in this room for GIS Day presenting to kind of highlight her work and share that out. And then this is the last thing, mostly to this point I've talked about producing things, making things. I use Twitter a lot to just find stuff to read. And so who I follow, and again, this is just straight up yesterday, whenever I clicked, this was like what was on the screen, not curated. These are the people whose stuff had come up at that moment. So.
Great, so content. Andy Crisadini is a co-founder of a content marketing firm here in Chicago, Orbit Media. And I would recommend following him because he is the guy who tells you what to do when you're writing a blog post and how to do it. and, you know, how to link it, how to engage, how to get like, you know, info. So we hosted him at one of these N10 Tech Club events, and I've just pulled together his 7 tips for like writing for the web. So 2.5 million blog posts are written every day, and only about 25% actually get linked. So 75% are not linked. They don't receive any traction. So his tips are really easy. 1, your theme. Before you even write something, do a Google search. Like if you're writing about cheese, find out like what people are talking, like what kind of cheese. Is it, you know, mozzarella? Is it a cheese sandwich, etc.? So that way when you write your piece, you know it's out there, you know how to like talk about it, because there's probably questions out there from others, right? 2, I'm just being quick because I know we have 5 minutes, so sorry, I'm like trying to rush through it. Your headline. Headlines get truncated when you know, people use Twitter and Facebook and they share it. So it really should be a great first impression. So this is an article that nearly 60% of job seekers in South Korea turn to fortune tellers for guidance. So like, you know, be really deliberate about what you're trying to say. Formatting. So this is interesting. Like, I know that we try to put so much in there, but white space is actually your friend. So for those that are using like these blog sources, like make sure, like create the white space, put photos up there, and like be really deliberate about how your journal shows up, etc. Your words, don't use jargon. I mean, we loved using jargon at the Trust, and we constantly are reminding ourselves, like speak to a 6th grader or a 7th grader, because we want it just to be shared. We want it for people to read it. But when my program officers get into like safety net and all this jargon, it's like, okay, no, we can't. I mean, you know. Yes, 80, right, exactly, Joe. So this is interesting. Number 5, he mentioned that your length matters, and I always thought that shorter things would be better. But it's actually the opposite. The longer ones get more links because people can link things throughout it. So like if you're quoting UIC or you're quoting a research person, you can deliberately put links in there. And when people link to other sources, you're getting more traction, you're getting more engagement, you're getting more collaboration. So according to HubSpot, articles and content that's more than 2,000 words was actually doing better from like a collaboration and visitorship. So that really blew me away, because I just assumed it would be shorter, be like deliberate, because we're, you know, there's so much out there, right? Images. So we do this whenever we pull an image for Facebook. It's like if we can't write a caption for it and nothing comes to mind quickly, that's not a powerful image. So that's a good lesson for you all, because we all want to put like photos and everything, but what is the photo saying? And if you can't write a caption quickly, then delete, find another photo, etc. And faces are very powerful because people get engaged with individuals. So 7, collaboration. So this is really in tune with everything that we've been pretty much saying. You know, you want to start following people. You want to engage with those people. Like when you're following an author or you're following someone that, you know, a sports fan and stuff, like start engaging with them, because then when you actually produce something, they're going to, like, you can link to them and you can say, hey, Sally, I just wrote this. When I wrote, because I'm trying to write for our website, and I'm trying to focus on, like, I wrote an article about 3 tips for social media and ADA, and then I wrote a recap of his presentation. He linked to it, Andy linked to it, other people started linking to it, they shared it on LinkedIn. So it's like the more people that you're already engaging with on certain topics, then they start, and that's important to get your word out there and stuff. So it's sort of like this ambassador program, these free agents, people that like that topic. You should start engaging with them if you're a fan of that, what they have to say. So for On the Table, what we did, you know, as Joe mentioned, it was a civic engagement platform. We wanted people to come together on our birthday to talk about how to make the region better. And we were listening. That's where UIC came in to help us like pull this information to help shape our priority funding areas for the future. And we were brand new on social media. We were like just trying and sticking things up there and everything. So we had to look at it very deliberately. And we decided to create a campaign. And what we did was we wanted to find individuals in the Chicago region that were passionate about making Chicago better and loved Chicago. And I pulled individuals outside the civic leadership landscape. I had a store merchant, I had an author, I had a chef, I had all these people that live in Chicago and love it as our ambassadors. So the first year we had about 350 ambassadors. And if you want to go to the next slide, it's going to be better. We ended up bringing them in for a photo shoot at the office, and we took their picture. And our whole marketing campaign was their photos. So like when you were in May and April in 2014, 2015, you might see your neighbor on like a taxi cab. You might see them in an ad. You might see them pop up and everything. But for social media, the next slide, we wanted to share their story. So we created a template. And Matthew Hoffman is an artist. He did the You Are Beautiful campaign. You've seen this around. So it was very templative. Like we used this template and it was like, let's talk about our future. And then it was like, meet Matthew Hoffman. We had some photos about him. We shared his story. And then there was the call to action. On May 12th, join the conversation about our community. And it linked to our On the Table website. So we wanted people to engage and sign up and be part of it. So, you know, there was something like, let's talk about research, meet Joe. You know, let's talk about food, meet Stephanie Izzard, or whoever these ambassadors were. And what was so powerful about this was we linked it to Matthew's Facebook page, right? So all of Matthew's family and friends started sharing this, and some of them actually were intrigued and like participated in On the Table. And all these ambassadors actually hosted a conversation. So people from like the public were able to be like, hey, I want to get involved at Matthew's table. I want to get involved here. And it really helped promote the work. Like these people were our foot soldiers to evangelize what On the Table was. And then the second year, we decided to use them, but it was a different theme, and our template was a little bit different. But it was the same kind of feeling, and that's where, you know, it's important to listen to people that are talking about the same research that you're talking to, and maybe utilize them as free agents to go out there and promote your mission or vision. And then, yeah, 17 million digital impressions. So that's where marketers look at, and impressions are when something's actually looked at and clicked on. Mentions are, the hashtag was talked about 8,561 times, the hashtag was mentioned. So impressions is more from like the website, the algorithms of like every time someone clicked on it, right, or looked at it. But this is actually people deliberately retweeting it, using it in Instagram, using it in Facebook, using it in Twitter, etc. Sorry for Steve.
Well, I think we incorporated the questions along the way, and I think that flowed very naturally. In closing, I want to say, you know, we've heard a lot of tools and tips, but just to go back up to the kind of 30,000 foot level, there's a lot out there on social media right now, and I think it's important that we as academics be there as well. You know, there's otherwise the important information, facts, science, get crowded out of conversations and discussions by other information. So we need to be pushing and putting ourselves out there and putting out the great work and that we're doing, and you know, the knowledge that we're producing into that space, so it can have hopefully the same influence on our policy, our culture, our future, as all the other information that's out there has now. So thanks for coming. I hope you walk away with something useful.